Alrighty, hello. Hello there. Hey, I'm Gabe Mac. This is the Game Beyond, and I'm doing a kickoff for a brand new game design masterclass with a concentration on serious games and gamification. Now, this is a course which I've been teaching for many years over in universities over in Europe. And it is for pretty much anyone. Doesn't matter what your skill level is. You don't need to know any coding. You don't need to know anything about how to design a Photoshop, for instance. You really don't need to know much except for having a bit of a passion and an interest in games, yes? And playing games and using games to basically unlock the power of play. That's how I like to call it. Harness the power of play. Because that's what serious game design does. We look as serious game designers throughout the world, and all we see is all these different games that are being played all over the world. In every little bit of society you can imagine, whether it's, politics or resource management or just going to the grocery store, right? Taking a flight on a plane. Yeah, all of these activities, whether you know it or not, actually have a lot of game theory designed inside of them. So this masterclass that I am going to be doing over the next 10 weeks is essentially turning those people who are interested into understanding and harnessing all of those different skills and knowledge and theories and methods and models that are used throughout our daily lives in order to solve real world problems. Yeah? Now, I know what you're probably thinking, much like I thought when I was first heard about this whole thing of serious games. I thought, what? Are you kidding me? You're gonna solve world hunger with games? Well, actually, yeah. You're gonna solve cures for HIV with games? Well, probably. You would be surprised at the amount of things that we have today that are already utilizing games and game design, whether explicitly or implicitly. You may or may not be aware of it. So this course is just for you. Now, to kick this off, what I want to do is I want to play a little video that basically goes through what we call the concentric model of game design. Now, this is the model which I teach in my online game basics course, which if you haven't taken, I highly recommend getting it because right now it's dirt cheap. The price is going to go up as more students flow in. It's a real early bird sale, you could say. Yeah. So basically what we're going to be looking at is a talk that I gave at the Louvre in Paris, or they have this whole expo underground under the Louvre. And this is at a conference called USI in Paris. And I go through and I show essentially how you can save the world using games. So let me just cue that up real quick here. Boom, 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 boom. Here we go. Grab that file. Here we are. Yes. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and watch that. And after that, I'm going to be giving a couple of previews from the course, a couple of preview modules, a couple preview trainings, so you can check it out for yourself. Now, Don't go away. Have a watch. And especially for those watching on LinkedIn, this is key. This is how to get paid faster by your clients using games. Did you hear me? Yes, I said how to get paid faster by your clients using games. And because we're talking about serious games and the epic win of the Game Beyond method, you also save a little bit of the world at the same time. All right, how do you do it? Check it out. Here we go. Doon, doon, doon. Welcome. Today, I'm actually going to be teaching you not necessarily everything about games. I'm going to teach you one specific game, a game that will help you get paid faster. So at the end of today, you will have a game that will help you get paid faster from your clients. Now, before we start, and before I give you this amazing game that will save you all kinds of stress, I've noticed that it's been kind of as far as conferences go, lack of engagement with audiences. Yes, lights up, please. Perfect. So we're going to do a little thing. Let me see. You guys got to help me out because today is my sister's birthday, and I don't really have a gift. So I'm going to see if everyone here can stand up and say happy birthday, Ariel, and I will record it with my video. If you guys do a good enough job, then I will continue and teach you how to make a game to basically get paid faster. All right, are you ready? Yeah, so everybody stand up. And on 3, we're going to say, happy birthday, Ariel. Yeah, like the mermaid. Yeah? Are you ready? 1, 2. Oh, wait, I'm doing pictures. I need to do video. All right, here we go. Yeah, the picture isn't going to work that well. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Bon! Merci beaucoup. Fantastic. All right. So my name is Gabe Mac, although everybody calls me Gabe Mac. I'm a teacher, award-winning creative, game designer, and I'm a Dudas priest. Now, Dudas priest, you must think, what is that? Well, that means I follow the way of the dude from The Big Lebowski. Yes? If you don't believe me, this is my official ordained minister card right here. I've done weddings in my bathrobes. Yes, drinking White Russians. And we're going to play a little game in between. We're going to play Spot the Dude. Okay, so when you see the dude in one of the pictures up on the slides, if you are the first one to jump up and yell, dude, yeah, then you will get a coin that will then come back to me, and I will give you 100% off my just about to launch online game design course. This is based on the workshop that I've been doing for many years. So keep your eye out for the dude, and you can win the course for free. Yeah? Now let's go back a little bit, and I'm going to tell you a story. A few years ago, I was the head of innovation at Indie Amsterdam, which is one of the #1 award-winning agencies in Amsterdam. But then at one point, my doctor says, listen, if you don't change your lifestyle, you're going to have a burnout. So I went to my boss and I said, hey, what can we do? And he said, well, not really much. We're only about 8 people, but, we got to beat the biggest BBDOs and publicists and all that kind of stuff. So nothing's going to change. So I did what anybody would do. Right here. Let's see, one of the ladies should come to you, this man right here, and give him a coin. Yeah, that's very good. So, I did what any normal person would do. I decided to go to Burning Man. And Burning Man is kind of a weird festival. But there I really connected back with my dudism. I really realized that, fuck it, dude. Let's go bowling and change the world, right? Or let me go and basically teach people how to change the world using games. So when I went back, I quit my job the next Monday.
I tried to figure out what it meant to be unemployed in French, so Google Translate said entrepreneur. Fine, that's good for me. So I'm an entrepreneur, all right? So I decided, as an entrepreneur, what could I do? Well, I've been teaching game design for many years, so I went and I decided to go and teach my award-winning method of making marketing and games to NGOs, companies, governments, and schools. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years, is going to these different large companies or small companies, etc., and teaching them all in a workshop, the Game Beyond method, right? Now, one thing, this is what most people can answer here. The larger the company, the what it takes to get paid? The longer, exactly. Absolutely. Where's the money, Lebowski? So, I didn't see it up there yet. So I went back to when I used to be unemployed entrepreneur before I was working at the agency. And this was kind of my payment history. And here you can see, oh, the colors aren't really showing up right. Okay, well, anyways, this is basically over 40 days. Yeah, basically over 54% took longer than 40 days to pay. I'm sure many of you have discovered this as well. And only really about 11% were paying, in 0 to 15 days. Now, this is something that everybody is having issues with. Not just me, and not just an entrepreneur. It's across the world. In fact, in Europe, it turns out if we can impact the exit rate and change that to a 1% reduction, in Portugal, that means 9,373 companies will be saved per year. In Spain, that's over 30,000 companies. Companies, not just entrepreneurs, companies that would be saved. In Italy, that's over 40,000 companies that could be saved by just changing 1%. Could we move that 1%, getting paid faster? So that's what I want to do, because not only did I think, hey, this is a great way to change the world, but I just didn't want that stress. Oh, right here, let me see, where did you jump? Ah, right there, c'est là. So, I didn't want that freelancer stress because I couldn't deal with the stress. I had a burnout. I had to sit on my couch and play video games until I got recuperated. And many of you may know the problems that you have as freelancer, navigating the client's invoice infrastructure maze, you have to find out like 20 different names, fill out 30 different forms, get approved by the Dalai Lama himself to get paid, it seems. It's a pain in the butt. In fact, the EU made regulation that many of you may know, Directive 2011 7-7-EU, which basically says, okay, late fees, you can basically charge 40 euros and up to 8% compounded per annum, but I never, ever, ever received a late payment from any of those big motherfuckers, right? So forget that. That doesn't work. So how could I get these people to pay faster? Could I turn it into a game? Now, basically, a game is a voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. Now, I have to voluntarily get these accountants to make sure that they put my invoice at the top. And that's something they're taught to do never, right? They don't want to put my invoice at the top. Why would they do that, right? That's an unnecessary obstacle. So I have to try and get them to voluntarily attempt to do that. Basically, what I use is something called a race mechanic. Very simple, pay before the deadline. Yeah, it's a race. I have to get there before the deadline, and if I do it, it's good. But then I need some kind of reward if they win the race. So I decided, that late payment fee, I can forget about that. So why don't I take a portion of that, about 0.3% of my invoice, and I will use that as the incentive. Now, I'm not talking about an incentive of, a discount of 0.3% because that's, the accountant's going to go, what the hell, no way, right? However, I made an observation. It turns out, right here, oh, sorry, he was first. So, where's the woman? Yeah, c'est là, right there? Yes, in the middle? Yeah, don't try and steal it, I'm watching, all right? so it turns out the majority of the invoices I was sending to were going to women. So I thought, okay, how can I hack into this biological, something women have, maternity and mothers and so forth. So I decided instead of giving a reward that is basically a goods reward, I had to change it to make what we call a God reward. Now, God means that as a reward payment, you feel that you've changed something. You're empowered by your own destiny, right? You are the God that creates and the God that destroys. And this is a very powerful pull in game design. So I decided to make what I called the Invoice Challenge. The Invoice Challenge game is very simple, and I put the rules on my invoice. If you pay 100% of the invoice before the due date, we will send an orphan child in Africa to school in your name through our partnership with SaveTheChildren.org. Yeah, pretty simple. A quick payment could change an orphan's life forever. However, if you don't pay before the due date, we don't do that, right? Because you lost the race. And it's not really very hard to do this. In fact, here's an example. I just have basically this with the rules and, the SaveTheChildren.org and a little picture of a girl, that's happy because, that works, right? So just putting this on the invoice and putting that in communication, that's pretty much all I did. So, what did that do? So, we already saw, we saw what happened before. Now, after, have a look at this. This is 0 to 15 days. This is 16 to 30 days. And the last 15% is like the 31 to 40 days. Only about 8% are paying too late. I mean, that's a change. I mean, it's like 75% almost that are paying on time. Definitely more than 1%, right? And here's the great thing. You guys want to make a quick picture? Yeah? Get all of my, make sure that you don't let the IRS know about this. So basically, there's another nice thing. It's also increased upsale because a couple of weeks later, I send a thank you note through the NGO to the client, and they get it, and they go, oh, thank you. We just received your postcard that we Save the Children. That's fantastic. Oh, by the way, we have another project coming up. We'd love for you to come and work with us. Far out, man. Yeah. Now I've got not only this thing working for me that I get paid on time, now it's also making sure that I'm getting clients to call back all the time. And it's the perfect touch point. It's much better than calling up and saying, hey, you got any work? It's like, no, here, thank you. It's a gift. Yeah? So it's basically, I win, because I get paid on time. The client wins because they feel that they've, made a difference. And of course, the kids win because they get to go to school. Right? Win, win, win. Epic wins all around. Even more interestingly, these companies, rather than me having to go through that whole maze and everything of trying to figure out what I need to do to get paid, now they are coming to me and telling me what I have to do. In fact, I've had large companies, let's say the competitors of this Apple, I won't mention any names, come to me and say, listen, Gabe, don't invoice us, invoice the subsidiary because then you're going to get paid faster. I never would have known that. How the heck would a simple unemployed entrepreneur know all these different things in this system? No. The game is what did it. So, this guy did get it this time. Very good. Congratulations. So here's the question. I mean, if one man can get paid faster and I can save about 20 kids a year, just imagine if 100 of you did that this year. What kind of change could you do? And you don't have to save a kid. You could plant a tree or, donate heart transplants, whatever, is good with your company in that sense. But 0.3% doesn't sound like much, but it can completely change the world. And more importantly, maybe your company won't go bust and you can actually pay your other employees on time because you'll be getting paid on time. But even more importantly than that, is the way of the dude, right? And that is, you know, a lazy guy. It doesn't quite count. Doesn't quite count. But I'll tell you what. Last check. Here we go. I'm going to get it right here. Yes, I saw the hand up, dude, right there. So that's basically pretty much the invoice challenge game. And I implore you to go and do it yourself. It's easy to implement. It's only costs 0.3% if they pay on time. And for the rest of you who didn't spot all the dudes, yeah, you can go to, hopefully if it's working, you can go to this URL, bit.ly/USI Paris Games, yeah, and you can get 50% off my new online course with the code USI Paris 50. Now this won't work forever, so make sure you get in there quickly. And that's my final gift to you, and now I'll open up for questions. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little talk from, as you can see by the beard, many years ago. Yeah, it's been quite a while, because there it was. Let's see, it was about here. Yeah, it was about here, and now it's all the way down to here. So yeah, it's been a while. Learned a few more tricks along the way, you could say. So yeah, the next little video that I want to pull up. Let me get my video queued again. So the next video I want to pull up is actually coming from the Training Masterclass course, which is available, just became available. How awesome is this? And yeah, I am inviting all of you to, join in for this course, because it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great. So yeah, here. But I can understand that some of you might be, a little timid. Let's talk about. Yeah, I can understand some of you might be a little timid about joining this masterclass course. What is it about? Essentially, what we're going to get into is serious games and gamification. And just to make sure that there's a little clarification on that, I've got one example training module from the course, and I wanted to share that with you as a little preview. So I hope you enjoy this little preview, and it'll really help to give you a better understanding of what it is when we talk about serious games or gamification or entertainment games. What does this all mean? Is it just a bunch of hooply-glooply or what? Well, have a watch, and maybe you might learn for yourself what that difference is. Alrighty. Welcome to the next section of the Game Beyond, Advanced Game Design. We're going to talk about gamification versus serious games. There's a lot of misconceptions about the term gamification and the term serious games. It gets thrown around a lot. So let's look at what it is these two things are. So the first question I've got is, have you heard of the term gamification? Now, probably you've seen it come up in some trending blog post. Maybe some UX, UI person was talking about it when they were trying to convince you about adding some kind of points or some kind of progress bar to your app, what have you. But let's pause on what gamification is for right now. And first, let's look at what is a serious game. Yeah? Now, there's basically 3 different types of games as far as classification goes, okay? First, we've got ourselves the entertainment industry, these entertainment games whereby the entertainment is the primary goal of the game. Now, next, we have serious games. Now, serious games, these are games full-on games, complete games with a serious purpose, and it is usually using elements from reality in the game. Now, the third one is gamification. Now, these are basically systems, typical systems that you and I use today in society or at work or at school or what have you, these different systems that are in play, and then people add game elements onto it, okay? So these aren't really games in of themselves. It's more like a system with game chocolate sprinkles on top, yeah? So those are the three basic types of games that we can classify this range of serious games in. So we have the entertainment games over here. Yeah, we've got our gamification over here, which isn't really a full-on game. It's just kind of sprinkles. But it has some kind of behavioral change that they want to do typically. And then right here in the middle, we've got the serious games. That's kind of the Venn of the diagram, right? So the next question is, well, what is gamification? So to put it simply, gamification is the use of game elements in non-gaming systems to improve user experience and user engagement. All right, we're back. Okay, cool. So, I hope you enjoyed that little example of what a serious game is versus gamification. These are, very trendy buzzwords that people use quite often. And I mean, I have colleagues that hate these words. They get triggered by them because they're used incorrectly by so many clients. So it's just something that can really help you, even if you are, talking to a game design company, you're trying to get some kind of design, or, maybe you've got a UX or some kind of UI designer, and, you're trying to work with them. So yeah, that hopefully that short little 3 minutes will clear up a lot of misunderstandings for you. I'm going to give you another little tip. It's about game flow and flow in games, and how flow is used. So yeah, have a look at this next little clip, which I'm going to be syncing up right now. Yeah, it's a little bit of a weird sync kind of thing going, but hey, that's how we flow, right? We go with the tools that we have with us, and I gotta admit, the tools that are available nowadays are pretty freaking amazing. So yeah, here we go. Let's have a look at flow. This next segment is about flow. It's about that transcendental state of awesomeness in games. So flow, this is one of the key things that we try to create in players as game designers, is to get them in this state of flow, to get them in the state where they feel like they are Neo out of the Matrix, where they do feel like Superman, or they do feel like Thor, where they do feel like the heroes, that they have an unstoppable quality about them. That flow, that they're just taking it out left, right, solving puzzle after puzzle, right? That flow. You probably know what I'm talking about when you maybe have been working on a project, or you got a whole bunch of to-dos and you're just getting through it, boom, 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 boom. You're in a flow, right? So let's look at flow. So flow is a state of exhilaration, deep sense of enjoyment. Flow is the mental state of operation in which a person in an activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and success. And I'm not going to even try to pronounce Mihaly's last name. So this is what we're talking about, getting players into that flow. And in game design, we actually have a term for it that is incredibly creative. We actually call it game flow, okay? And we actually have a chart for it too. And you may remember this chart from the very first introduction episode, where we basically have challenge from lowest challenge here to highest challenge, and skill level of the player from lowest skill level to highest skill level. Now, depending on the challenge, or whether or not there is enough challenge to the skill level, you're either going to create apathy where players don't want to play because they're too bored, or you're going to create anxiety on the other side, right? So you have anxiety on one side and you have boredom on the other. And then right in the middle here, this is where you have your flow. This is where you want to keep your players, right? This is where you want to keep the participants at, so that their skill level and their challenge is always being matched up together. Yeah? And that is game flow. Now, we're going to get a little bit more later into different types of techniques that you can use. For instance, in affordance, we have a lot of tips of how do we create that flow. In leveling, we have a lot of examples of how to create that flow. But one of the things that you can use besides that other graph, and this is, more of a deeper dive into getting people into a state of flow, is actually we're going to flip the graph around, and we basically go towards more of a understanding of how we need to increase, the skill to the challenge to create a wide variety of emotions. So for instance, down here, when it's really low skill level and really low challenge, we have apathy. Now, as we move up, it actually turns out that when we have an ease of skill and a low challenge, it actually becomes relaxing. It's almost like a Zen thing. And we know about this from the different types of games, of submission games, remember, in our whole aesthetics. So here we see that aesthetics of submission and relaxation games happening. Now, on the other side, if we keep the challenge level increasing along and don't increase the skill level, then we go from apathy to worry, like, oh my gosh, don't think I can handle this, up into anxiety, right? Where basically people have no idea what to do and they're totally anxious the whole time. This you want to kind of go away from, right? The best place to be is on this side, right? If we have, for instance, right in the middle of that skill level and challenge, we start to get an arousal, right? But we're not yet in that flow, right? We start to get a feeling of control on this side because it's too easy, a feeling of worry on this side. So here is where you really want to try and pull your players in, yeah? Keeping them in that arousal, control, maybe even dipping into relaxation every now and again and keeping them in that state of flow, yeah? So let's look at some keys in understanding how we get into this state of flow. First of all, we've got a couple of different points. We know we're in flow when we are focused on the task at hand and we lose ourselves in the task. We forget about the time, right? Like how long you've been going into this game design course because you're just such in a flow. You have no idea. It's been hours and you're still in control, right? You're in control and you're feeling good. These are all things that we know that we are getting into a state of flow when we start recognizing this. And in getting into that state of flow, you can hear it, and when people are talking, they're in the moments, they're in the groove, they're in the zone, right? These are all very typical examples of being present in some kind of emotional state. And then you have, for instance, we're in the present, we're on a roll, right? We're wired in, okay? You're singularly focused, or you're going through beast mode, right? This is, of course, the gamers know what I'm talking about there. You're centered if you're being zen. You're on fire emoji, right? We're in tune together, man. We're totally zen with each other. You folks understand what I'm talking about, getting in the flow, how you recognize it. You've all been in this state, I hope, at least once, probably multiple times in your life. So yeah, just recognize that. So how are we getting into the flow? What are some tricks and ways in which we will get into it? Well, we're going to be looking at a bunch of different models, for instance, the fog model later. But right now, I want to just talk about the different conditions you need to have for creating flow. First of all, you have to be motivated for the task, and you should have a clear purpose. That is why creating a clear goal with a measurable outcome, time, duration, and rule set is so important, so that you make sure that first condition is met. The second condition is there should be given immediate feedback on how well you are doing. If I'm going to do something and I don't get feedback for an entire week about how I've done, I'm not going to be in that state of flow too well. And thirdly, there must be a balance between how you experience the challenge and how you perceive the level of your relevant skill. And that's what we were talking about before. Remember that balance between skill and challenge. And most importantly, the perception of the player. Like, you may think it's not challenging enough, but the player may think, oh man, this is way too challenging. Or the exact opposite. And that is why it's so important to play test your game. Now let's talk about this flow channel, okay? So one trick in which to get people into this state of flow is start with relatively low difficulty to make the games playable for beginners. And then what we do is we gradually increase the difficulty of the challenges. Now, the increase mustn't be too slow or players will get bored. But it also mustn't increase too fast or players will get frustrated because they fail too often, right? You cannot design flow in one go. You have to test it. You have to play it. You have to try it out yourself. So let's look at how we actually build this level of flow. And what I like to do is to tell about the three acts or the three stages. This is something that we see very common in, for instance, cinema and in books and in stories. There's this 3-act. And it's, in a way, our minds are programmed to understand these 3 acts, right? And so as we design games, it's much easier for us to basically adhere to the 3-act structure, whether that's in a level itself or over the whole game, in order to piggyback onto all that pump of knowledge and awareness about the 3-act structure that's been going on in people for decades. So let's look at that. First of all, we know this, on this side we have our difficulty of, the challenges. But here, instead of skill, we have the percentage of game completion. How much have we completed the game? Now, the first step of the game is to basically do your climbing or your onboarding. So this is the tutorial. This kind of starts off as an easy tutorial, just kind of climb their way up. And what you see is it starts off a little hard and then it gets easier. Yeah, and we have this little rest right here. Now, after this rest, that's when we, get let out into the world. We start fighting. We start coming across a lot of different challenges, and we start seeing, some boss fights, as those challenges get more and more difficult, right, over time. And then we have level off with another rest, right? After a boss fight, you have a little rest. You come to, oh, that was intense, all that big fight. So, and then after that rest, we go on another climb again. And here we find our end boss fight, the final boss. And you can see this is the tutorial, the start level 1 Padawan. Here we have the level 2 Jedi starting to fight. And then finally, here we have the Master, Jedi Master, right? And that's how it's important though, remember, after you're doing these climbs, you got to give the rest. You have to give the rest after the climb because that actually helps people get into a higher state of flow. This next segment I want to talk about is pacing, because this whole idea of the leveling and the resting and how you bring people along is basically pacing. That's what pacing is, yeah? Just like in a marathon, you got to pace yourself that you don't run out of steam. The same with your gameplay. You got to pace your gameplay so you don't run out of steam. So pacing is the rate of progression players experience in the game. So we've already looked at this whole, leveling scheme from tutorialization, onboarding through learning the skills and the mechanics to final mastery with the boss fight. But essentially, pacing, it doesn't take this real easy linear structure. I just kind of made this to really make it clear what's going on. A real kind of game, you really have more of a dynamic structure going like this, where you have, the engagement that's going on one side, and you have the time on one side. Now, this is, of course, being taken from a movie, Star Wars, where we see, all the kind of interactions that's happening, the actions that are happening, and you see this kind of woo, 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 right? Up and down. That's pulling people into the story, because each one of these resting places basically a quick breather so you can take them to the next higher level, yeah? And so it's got to be a nice variation of back and forth, resting and back and forth. And that is basically pacing. Now let's look at the narrative game structures. What are you talking about? We're talking about linear, nonlinear, or how to tell a story with choice in a game. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, how much influence will your player have on the game world? The term we use for that is agency. How much license do you give them to kill inside your game? For instance, yeah, sure, you can go around killing the bad guys, but do you also let them kill the mentor in the beginning that's telling them how to play the game, or to kill Q, who's giving them all the great, devices and stuff, right? How much do you allow your players to influence the game world? That's agency. The amount of influence a player's actions have on the game world is called agency. Now, this is, easy way to remember it. Just imagine that James Bond 007 secret agent with that license to kill. How many people can he kill? Can he even, if he's trying to save the princess, is he able to kill the princess in the end? Yeah? Situations that give autonomy as opposed to taking it away also have a similar link to motivation. Now, studies on choice have found that increasing a participant's options and choices increases their intrinsic motivation. So let's have a look at some of these different game structures or interactive narrative structures. What we're talking about here is how we go through each of the different plot points. We have here, for instance, a linear progression. It goes from A, B, C to D. And we see that this linear progression is pretty boring. Now, some games will impose a linear order of events on the player. The challenges must be done in a fixed order. Now, the good side of this is it's easy to outline the plot of the game. Designers know what a player has done, what a player has seen at any given moment in the game. However, the cons are that the players can feel it's restricting the freedom inside the game. Another different approach is something called the fold-back structure. Now, this fold-back structure, we see that even though the character is given multiple choices on how to proceed, eventually all those choices will lead to the exact same plot points. Now, this gives the idea or a bit more of a feeling of choice for the player, but really it doesn't give them any agency at all. So we see here that the player is presented with choices, but they eventually lead to the same node. The pros of this are that, it gives the impression of a choice, and it still maintains that strict plot structure. However, of course, the cons is that the player feels that the choices don't really matter. It doesn't matter what I choose on A because I'll get to D in the end. Moving on, we have a different approach to game structures called branching. Now, here we give our players choices, and depending on those choices, each of the plot endings will be different depending on the choices the player takes throughout the game. Now, this is a really great example of how we can make a game that really gives every choice a player could want. Ideally, every player choice should lead to a different state in the end. Now, there are some cons to this. First of all, it is very expensive to develop. I mean, each one of these is animation, scenes, worlds, voiceover, actors, all kinds of stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on all the different choices that you have, compounded x 2, 3, 4 times, divisible by infinity, right? It can be very expensive. And players only see a fraction of the content. They may only play this bit, and they've literally missed 75% of the game. On the other hand, it really gives genuine choice to the players. And it gives them plenty of content to go through and explore. Oh, replay it again, and to try and go and find all the different game endings. Now, there is a middle ground between the fold-back structure, the linear structure, and this branching structure. And what we call it is game structures. We have a branching with dead ends. So you'll see that, in this, players may take a number of choices, but one of those choices or multiple choices will end the game. It ends. Sorry, it's come to a dead end. Now, this solution does create dead ends, which has its pros and cons as well. The pros, of course, are it really does limit the complexity of a simple branching structure, where you have for each one of these endings, you also have to have a whole, animation, cutscene, or what have you. One of the cons, of course, of this is that players often they have to, turn back in order to win the game. So it's like, I went here, I died. All right, let me try this way. I died, and let me try this way. Yeah, so that's kind of the turn back happening. Now, there is another version that we can use, and it's kind of like the folding structure we looked at before, and this is called convexity. So what we do is we eventually branch out, and then it branches back into a common single narrative. And this journey or this path, even though multiple, will always lead the same. As they say, all roads in Europe lead to Rome, right? Now, there's a lot of game choice in this type of structure. But in the end, you go to that single focus point or the end of the level. Now, the pros of this, of course, are that there's this genuine choice, right? There's a genuine path that the players have taken that's unique. There's room for all kinds of discovery and expression, during that journey. And it also limits the complexity of all that plot control. I mean, you can do that not too hard compared to all the other branching structures. Now, of course, there are a few cons. One of the first cons is that, still much content the players probably won't see because they have to go through every single journey, modification, choice that is in there, right? So they're only going to see a percentage of the game. And it is more expensive to produce than your typical linear structure. So there we have it. There we have different interactive narrative structures, from linear progression to fold back to branching with dead ends, and convexity, right? What I want you to do is I want you to take a puzzle. I made a little puzzle to see if you can figure out these different structures and branching dead ends. So you can use the QR code here, or you can use the link that's also down below, and I want you to identify the different types of game structures, right? And see if you can figure out the puzzle and remember what they are.